The actualities of what goes on within an offshore finance centre, and what we're going to look at in a moment is in part the distortion in culture and the collapse, in some respects, of what I would term morality, that comes in part as being an offshoot of a financial distortion which bulks up one industry and certain parts of the stratas of society. How many of you are journalists? Okay. Lawyers? Okay. Right, so this is going to come in sort of two halves, but probably more interest to journalists than lawyers, but we'll get to practical solutions for lawyers towards the end. So, start. What I'd like to deal with in 90 minutes is actually quite difficult because there's an awful lot to say. But I'm going to deal with it really in three parts. How bad is it? Why is it so bad? And what to do about it? And that then subdivides into what do islanders need and what do you as investigators, lawyers, investors need to know, and how to deal with it once it's gone wrong. Okay, house style. I always speak to what I've personally experienced, cases I've been involved in, where I've met the victims, I've met the investigators. In some cases I have been the victim. I've seen the documents, and in relation to Jersey, I've seen the body parts. Who am I? I'm a native. Now, you go to a lot of these conferences and you deal with people who've come in from elsewhere, started to establish careers offshore and so on and so forth. But I'm qualified originally as a barrister, returned to my native island, to my local qualifications, and then set up in law from there. I've done some defence work, I've done some regulatory work, but a major part of my practice is dealing with complex civil cases, predominantly for plaintiffs. I enjoy suing banks. It's a sort of harmless blood sport. And that's really what I've done, which is run-of-the-mill commercial litigation. I've also done some pro bono work for a number of people, and I've given an inadequate amount of assistance to the Jersey Care Leavers Association, which has been helping people who are in care in Jersey as children. Perhaps more importantly is the fact that I am Indigenous, I am a native, I'm from Huguenot stock, we've been there for 100 years. So I've got blood in me, blood there, I've got deep roots. I've got skin in the game, which a lot of people offshore just don't. It's somewhere to make layer money and move on. I've had the fortune to do stuff abroad. I still do quite a lot of abroad, which gives me a slightly different stance. I've been all over the place at various stages, and I like to think that I don't think in the same way that many who don't go off the island do. So how do I end up standing here effectively as a whistleblower? You'd expect me to be mainstream, part of the finance industry, think it's all wonderful, but I don't. And I'm not whistleblowing on an institution, but really upon the island as a whole, because it needs to be done. And I've had some defining moments over the years which have been all too unpleasant. Various stages, I've tried to keep my mouth shut, keep my head down, avoid confrontation, because I, as a human being, wanted a normal life. It just does not work like that in Jersey. The oligarchy want to get rid of people, they do. I share a common status with 2 chiefs of police, 2 chief investigating officers, 3 politicians, a care worker, 2 former ministers, and innumerable others that are quietly assassinated by the local judicial system and the prosecutors working in tandem. Now, I'm going to come back to this as a sort of theme later on, but we have actually lost 4 very high-ranking police officers because they were investigating the wrong crimes, mainly child abuse, or they've inadvertently fingered the fact that it's our judiciary or Attorney General that's corrupt rather than them. That's a very inadequate, brief description of how the regime and how the darkness works in Jersey. Now, for the benefit of the journalists here, I'm not telling you anything new. I'm not telling you anything that an informed, or reasonably active journalist could not gain quite quickly in Jersey. We have a completely dysfunctional local media, and I will come to the corruption within that in a moment. But there is a sort of underground. You can get most of the information off the blogs, you can get the documents, you can get the photographs, and I will give you links to those in due course. Now, what we're going to come on to is who bears the greatest responsibility in relation to all of this. And start with the prime culprit. I can see people going, what? Now, there is a real reason why I'm saying this. We have a feudal constitution, and this lady employs the people that are really at the head of the problem for us. She employs directly our Chief of Justice, called a bailiff, the Deputy Bailiff, the Attorney General, and the Court of Appeal, plus the prosecutors underneath them. Now, there is no intermediate link. That is the lady who is in charge. There is nothing else in between. Okay? So when you go to this lady and you say, excuse me, we've got all sorts of problems here. What are these people doing? You get the brush off. Now, that is the feudal society that we live in. There is nothing in between, and we have a smile, nod, wave, and ignore streams monarch. Now, the other person who bears a lot of responsibility for all of this, I'll come on to in a moment. But you can see what's going on here. It's very little different from an old-fashioned privateering society or robber barons. Once these people have got their bums on their seats, and it's Buggins' his leap, they are immovable, and ordinary islanders are ignored and disenfranchised at court, as it were. But it is court. That is where the power resides in Jersey. Now we come on to the next person who's guilty, and poor old David Cameron probably doesn't even know where Jersey is. But there is a split responsibility because HMG, as opposed to HM, has a responsibility. There is a constitutional mechanism for them to step in when we get to endemic corruption, breakdown in law and order and related. And you can all take a view later on, perhaps we'll take a straw poll at the end as to whether you think we're at the stage where that ought to be done. But Her Majesty's government, what us? Not us. We can't act, we won't act. Local appointees, how can we deny responsibility, help the local oligarchy? Now, I always wonder whether the Treasury's had a quiet word, because a lot of money flows from Jersey and Guernsey into the City of London. So what's the real politic here? The islanders are expendable, doesn't matter what happens out there, we ignore responsibility and we get the cash flow coming in. Now, that looks to me like the real what's going on. I've mentioned under here Leah McGrath Goodman. Does anybody in here know who Leah McGrath Goodman is? She's a shit-kicking lady journalist. She really is good. She does big exposés for Newsweek. Is it Newsweek? I can't remember, but yeah, I'm right. Okay. So she's an American. She wants to come to Jersey. She wants to do some research and write papers in relation to the child abuse scandal. So she gets on an aircraft, and the British government get her off at Heathrow and stick her in jail. 12 hours. Wasn't allowed to speak to a consul for 8. Okay, why? Now, what sort of connection are we looking at, and what's the reason for it? They pulled it up on a visa technicality. You do not put American citizens in jail for 12 months because they're on a visa technicality. Sorry, 12 months, 12 hours or whatever. Now, that was because she was a journalist and she was from the outside and she wanted to shine a light. Now, what sort of backup are the Jersey authorities getting from the English authorities when they can pull a stroke like that? Okay. Size and intensity of the problem, from my perspective, I have a very small firm. There are 7 of us. Low turnover of staff historically. During the course of my career, I've had 2 murders reported to me by staff. By staff. I have 7 of them. One was in fact by a supplier, but again, very low number of suppliers. Both have been covered up or protected. Now that makes a big impact on me, but let's start to look at the numbers. Let's look at a multiple homicide, multi-agency cover-up, Attorney General, police, media, etc. We'll come on to that in a moment. I can give you the papers in relation to that. Worstful thing about Jersey is a lot of stuff leaks, so we've got the forensics. And not forensics on that, we've got forensics on other things. We've got the police reports on that, and everybody in Jersey's got one of these, but nobody does anything about it. Graft, that was one that ended up on my desk. We have, just to give you a quick soundbite, somebody saying, well, the housing minister got a suitcase of cash for that one, brownfield site. Next day, somebody comes along, buys it for £1 million, its real value is £50,000, and so on and so forth. Now, we see this coming. I can see this coming. People come to me and say, what do we do with this? We're going to get it covered up. It's going to be covered up. Okay. So we go to parent. I go to the Queen, or Queen's representatives, and we send all the papers off to London, to Whitehall, and we say, Ministry of Justice, come on, do something. Make sure this isn't covered up. Nothing. Same-o. And that's the problem we have. We are not heard. Rapes, I'll deal with them in more detail later on. Some really nasty ones that I've come across, sat with victims. And again, this is not something I went out and looked for. It's just part of being somebody in a small community. So, cover-ups, it's known really locally as the Jersey Way. And I've seen some pretty horrific ones. Been involved in them at any number of levels. Rape, okay, as reported to me. How does a 14-year-old girl have a bottle inserted inside her? How does she end up telling this story to probation, to police, to it coming out in mitigation, because obviously this lady gets into trouble with law enforcement going on? And how come I see this guy doing his Christmas shopping? Now, we're 80,000 people. We have a tiny community. How is this possible? Now, very distressed, very sad, unhappy lady. Her story is well known locally. There is nothing new under the sun here. Lots of us know about it. It's been told publicly. How does this happen in a small community, and what is involved? Now, you can see this little pattern here for me with my tiny little law firm seeing all of these things. Financial cover-ups, i.e. post-crime. We'll come on to some of those in a moment, which might be perhaps of more interest for you, some of the lawyers and so on and so forth. Just deal with the dysfunctional judicial system. It's an engine of state. There is no delineation in the Constitution between the judiciary and the executive and the legislature in the same way that you have over here. So Parliament is presided over by the Chief Judge, rubbing shoulders with politicians all the time, and there is a culture. The culture is protect Jersey PLC, so they don't want a scandal. They don't want the truth told. A blanket is thrown over everything. So that is the first thing that comes up. It's the reputation of the island. So, abuse of minors, which is up there too. We have an ongoing independent care inquiry in Jersey, so I don't really need to do too much with it. We as natives don't actually know what to make of it yet. Is it going to be fixed? Is it going to be a cover-up? But it's the only game in town. So a lot of us have taken the view that we ought to cooperate, and we will cooperate. The records of that for journalists who want to know is that everything that goes into the inquiry and transcript is downloadable, all the documents. So it's all that. Now, in relation to the care inquiry, this was a sort of another wake-up from my point of view. There I am happily suing banks and upsetting them, UBS, Barclays, Lloyds, you name it, I've done them. and that really would, in other circumstances, been the whole of my professional career, I suppose. But I came to report a murder as reported to me by a member of staff who'd been an inmate at Haute de la Garenne, which is the children's home. I ended up having a meeting with Lenny Harper, who many of you may know was the SIO, Senior Investigating Officer, on Operation Rectangle. Operation Rectangle was and is the inquiry in relation to what happened up at the children's home. So I went and I met with him, and I'll come back to my meeting in a moment, but I meet a logical policeman. I've reported a crime to him, and in due course I went on to provide some free assistance to the Care Leavers Association. So I go up there, I go to the site, and I see teeth in jars. Lots of teeth with roots attached. Now, I don't know how many of you have got children, but teeth don't normally fall out with roots attached. And I'll come to the importance of that comment in a moment. And then you get to Haute de la Garenne. Why do this children's home have lime pits? I mean, is that normal? I mean, do you need lime pits to operate a children's home, or do you need it to get rid of bodies? Now, the forensic reports in relation to Haute de la Garenne are on the internet. They are available. I can give you links to them. And it's quite interesting. We'll come to the way they got rid of the policemen who were actually investigating this in due course. But the forensics were at one stage on the States of Jersey Police website. Then they were removed when they managed to get rid of the policemen who were actually determined to do something about it. But there are copies of them circulating in the islands, and you can get a link to it. It's still up on the internet. So let's come back to the teeth and the local culture. Now, the Evening Post is our only newspaper. So you've got something that's pretty determinative here. You would expect the islanders to go, oh, well, that's not right. But no, the Jersey Evening Post runs stories saying it was the Tooth Fairy. It was the Tooth Fairy. I am not making any of this up. I can see disbelief on people's faces. They actually claimed it was the Tooth Fairy, that people had been giving kindly a shilling or so, and all these teeth had fallen between the floorboards and ended up in the cellar. Right? And people swallowed it. I can remember sitting in the butcher shop, standing in the butcher shop, and this couple came in waving this paper around their head saying, oh, look, it's the Tooth Fairy. We knew it was all lies. It doesn't happen in Jersey. And that is a very, very chilling, well, I don't know what you call it. I suppose it's an indictment. So, anyway, teeth. Other bits and pieces. I've actually found it over the years really quite difficult to contain all this. It's very difficult to be dealing with this sort of stuff and then to go and have to stand in front of and present a case in front of a judge that you know was Attorney General at the time when nothing happened. But that is every single day in Jersey. It's all like that. Now, the dysfunctional judicial system merits a book in itself. I've been working in it for a long time. Obviously, I've fallen out with it upon many occasions. In Jersey, a judge and two jurats can find somebody guilty of anything. Of anything. Fundamental laws and protections can be rewritten to suit the oligarchy, to shut people up, to dispose of political opponents, to get rid of policemen who are doing the wrong thing in the wrong place, as in investigating crimes. And we have a Court of Appeal, which is even worse. It is counterproductive in terms of producing justice or a breathing society, and I will come on to some specifics in relation to that. The chilling thing about the Court of Appeal, what's even worse, is that a lot of them are imported rather than being local judges, but I'll come on to how all that happens in a moment. Now, where have I got to? Oh. It's all right, we've got a slide problem. It's, let's try this. No. Deborah, could you just get the AV person to come back, because we've sort of lost slides for a moment. Not sure why it's just gone off for some reason. Okay. Now, I said earlier that we had an absence of... so what have we got up there? No, I can't even see what we've got up there, but there we go. Okay. So imagine you've got a slide dealing at the moment with data protection. Now, you can imagine data protection, if you want to shut people down, is quite a useful way of doing things. Completely dysfunctional. We have a data protection commissioner. The statutes are similar to the ones in this jurisdiction, but it seems to be used in a very different fashion. And I'll come on to a tale of two data protection commissioners in a moment. Dealing then with, we've also got a financial services commission. That is the linchpin of our economy. We've got 90% of our GDP is in the financial services industry. Now, in the moment, I'll give you a tale effectively of two regulators, if I can put it in that way, double standards applied, and deal with the history of the deputy chairman, which explains in large part what is very, very wrong in Jersey. Now, time doesn't allow me to deal with all of these instances in great depth, so I can only touch on a few of them. So let's imagine we had a slide up, but there we go. In relation to the deputy chairman of the Financial Services Commission. Now, this is a man called John Averty, and he has had an interesting career. He was chairman, at least, I think, of the local newspaper, the board of the local newspaper for many years, former States member. Now, rumours in relation to Mr. Averty, as he's known as, have been circulating in the island for a long time. It came up in a scrutiny hearing, and somebody said, well, hold on, this man's a multiple rapist. Now, how do you keep that quiet in an island? And what sort of effect is that having on culture? Does this explain, for example... Sorry, I'm lost up. It's not going anywhere. Okay. Right. So, presented with these rumours, I commissioned a very small amount of research in relation to this gentleman. And within a very short period of time, it was possible for my investigators to name 5 victims. Now, these are all local. Some of them have made complaints. Some of them have been in a position where they've been too intimidated to do so. Other things the investigators came back with was the sort of list of luminaries, the board members of the Jersey Evening Post at the time that the allegations were made. Some of them were actually made to the board. And the difficulties that they had with the computer system there, which was allegedly because of the volume of pornography kept at the office on the office computer. And I'm not going to do it today. It's not my place to do it. I actually have the names of 5 victims. Now, it would be completely wrong for me to start naming people who may not wish to be named and all the rest of it. But if within, as a private individual, effectively, I can come up with that for a £2,000 spend, what on earth is our law enforcement doing? And at what level have you got a community of interest in making sure this stuff does not surface? It is obvious to me, and I live in a little island, that not everything in England functions perfectly. You have your own problems. Everything is white, black, and indeed grey. But can you imagine the position where somebody in an equivalent position in England had these rumours regularly circulating? Well, there'd be media would be all over it. Law enforcement would be prompted to do something. But in Jersey, nobody can hear you scream, and if they do, nobody will do anything about it. Now, if I wanted to put a single thumb on the sort of choke points in relation to why our society doesn't function and why we have so much corruption, it is the absence of proper media. We have 80, perhaps 100,000 people, depending on which bits of the census that you believe. We have a swollen GDP. We have lots of what I would term city or nation problems. And then we have this sort of parish council reporting, as it were. And it is that man's newspaper that had the temerity to run an article which actually seriously asked people to think that it was the tooth fairy. Now, it's not surprising that things have gone uncovered, that things have been going wrong for a long time, because the whole thing starts to fit together, and it's called Jersey PLC. So you've got the judges don't want a scandal, the Attorney General doesn't want a scandal, the police will come to in a moment, but they do as they're told, and you've got the media damping it down. So when you have something like the child abuse investigations, you've got the local media damping it down and undermining the investigation and creates credibility. You've got the external media, to some extent, doing the opposite until they run out of steam. In relation to the external media, Jersey does not sell newspapers. We do not have votes at Westminster. We are completely disenfranchised and we are left at the mercy of Her Majesty's robber barons. That's the reality of the situation. If I can get this back to something perhaps a little bit more mainstream from the point of view of an Offshore Alert conference, let's look at financial regulation in Jersey and look at a tale of two regulators. These are both cases that I was involved in. I haven't mentioned the names because I haven't got as far as getting a permit to do so, but there we go. So we have a very large, first case is, you can read about this online. You can actually read, if you're an interested journalist, I can tell you where to get this from. It was in the FT, with a different slant on it, but the case itself is in the FT. Egregious fraud. Local trust company has two clients. They are effectively in partnership. And so what do? They like one more than the other. So they help one steal the asset from the other. Okay? So, simple shuffle. So they've got two clients, and all of a sudden one client owns the complete asset. And it was big, it was a $40 million asset. So after they've done that, they are then going to the defrauded man and saying, we need some more capital to put into this enterprise. This is after they know that it has gone sideways to their favoured client. So, defrauded party puts some money in, more money in. Now, this is not complicated stuff. It's called theft. It's called fraud. It's basic sleight of hand. Now you see it, now you don't type criminality. So, in the present case, as this has been through a New York court, and a judge has sat there with absolute disbelief and listened to these people from offshore explaining how they did it, and they didn't think that they'd done something particularly wrong. And the discovery has been obtained, the paper trail has been obtained. So go to the local Attorney General and you say, look, this is what's happened. This is called fraud. Here is your draft sample offence, which I can draft for you, two of them quite simply. Here is your documentation. here is the documentation from inside the trust company, here is the testimony given in New York, here is what an American judge made of it, so here is your criminal case with a nice bow on it. You can't miss. What's happened? What's happened? Has there been a prosecution? No. Is there going to be a prosecution? I don't know. I know when the papers went in, and I know what's happened since then, to the best of my knowledge, which is absolutely nothing. So I wrote to Her Majesty's local representative in Jersey, a man called Sir John McColl, the Lieutenant Governor. This is part of our old feudal structure. If you've got a problem, you want to get to Her Majesty, you speak to this guy. They go native very quickly. They go and wine and dine the local oligarchy and so on and so forth. So I say, well, what's going on? What are your people doing? You have responsibility for the Attorney General. Take a hike, he says. I'm not getting involved. I'll send you later on to somebody. Goodbye. So what's the problem with this one? I think the problem is it's a big company. It's a big company, therefore they don't want to upset it. It will have friends at court because it's an English PLC subsidiary, well written about in the private eye. They have a very rude word for that company. Cool. So that's the tale of our regulator. Now, you would expect a regulator that wants to have a functioning financial services industry to get pretty hot under the collar with that sort of now you see it, now you don't type fraud. Okay, so let's come on to a second tale of regulators. And again, this is something I was personally involved in. Small, medium-sized entity. It's shut down by the regulator. It's shut down for conflicts of interest, whatever else they decided. There were some losses. Yes, people had lost money. Nothing has been alleged to have been stolen. So the Jersey Financial Services Commission treated it as a cause célèbre. And the unfortunate client becomes very sick, has a seizure, a very severe seizure, breaks his back in 2 places. Nothing daunted, the JFSC are intent on hammering him and his co-workers into the floor. And this is how it works. Because you've got somebody that you can take a pop at, you can hold this up to the outside world and say it all functions, because the outside world isn't going to know about the one that you let off. Now, that, to me, is not how it's all supposed to work. But that's only part of the story, because once you get into the mores of the judicial system in Jersey and you've been accused of something, you are guilty. That's how it works. Because jury trials are limited and you have a professional assessors of fact who are part of the system. So they sit on civil and criminal cases. But anyway, regulatory is quasi-criminal, whatever the definitions. So here's the client. He was 51% shareholder in this company. He was nominally at least the CEO. He was certainly a director of it. Regulator comes along and says, out. Okay, I'm out of my own company. I cannot get into my own office. I am not allowed to have access to my own computers anymore. Okay? Now, that's one strand. Now, the second strand is that when we get these cases in, I often go off to counsel in England, and I've seen the proposed public statement in relation to my client, and I take it off to a QC who does this all the time. He says, they can't do that. Where's the balance in it? They've got the facts wrong, right? Now, we're talking about basic facts. Which company went under, how much for, who it owes, things like that nature. So when we go to the regulator, we say, look, you've got the figures wrong, you've got this wrong, take a hike. Now, let's go back to the strand I was dealing with in a moment. Here is the accused in relation to these serious regulatory offences. He's been pushed sideways. He's been pushed sideways. Can't get into his own computers, can't get at documents. So he's been pushed out. Financial Services Regulator goes along to the company and hits it with a production notice. You must produce documents to me. So all these documents are then produced on 2 CDs, and they are given to the regulator. So here we are in litigation with the regulator, and I say to the regulator and their lawyers, well, if I'm going to do a defence job here, I'd like to see the documents, the same documents that you've got from my client's company. No. What do you mean, no? Hold on a minute. Are we not supposed to have the same documentation? It's our company? No. Now, how many people in this room think that's wrong? No. I mean, it's not just wrong, it's completely potty. That the prosecution actually take your documents away and then they give you the documents that they think you might want to see to run your own defence. They don't give them all back to you, they just take what they've got. So it strikes me as being completely potty. Now, lawyers in this room would get that in 30 seconds. I mean, it has to be equality of arms at some level. So we go off to the Royal Court and we say, excuse me, would you please order the regulator to give me the 2 CDs of documents that they have taken from my client's company where he is guilty of all these offences because he is the one running the company. So on day 1, he has the access to documents. Day 2, he's been accused, he's not allowed that. Now, no, says the court. We go to the Court of Appeal. No, and pay costs. Now, if that is a functioning judicial system which is dealing with fairness, to quote the man from Private Eye, I'm a banana. So we'll get on to, I think we're out of sync here. But anyway, let's deal with data protection. When the slide got lost. Now, I'm not an expert in relation to data protection, but it's pretty obvious to me it's being misused in Jersey for political control. And I'll give you a link sometime later on today to some of the cases. They've managed to shut down the only real media that we have, in part, 2 bloggers, perhaps 3 bloggers. The law was rewritten by the judges in order to make bloggers into data controllers. Now, does that strike a resonance with the journalists in this room? Yeah, you see where I'm going with this? So, first of all, what happened was the multiple homicides down at the General Hospital. Now, this is quite a good example of what goes on, and I'll get you some links later on. The basic story is as follows. The police arrest a Gulf War syndrome nurse. He has an unlicensed firearm, large quantity of ammunition. He has in his possession a large quantity of lethal drugs, which, if injected simultaneously, induce death and are untraceable. So they've arrested him. Then they pull the statistics from the General Hospital and they look at the death rate when this guy is on duty. And it peaks on his shifts. People come forward and they say, I was feeling really bad when I was in hospital and I wanted to commit suicide, and this nurse came up and he said, look, I'll show you how to do it properly. And they're looking at really potential for some very large numbers of unlawful killings. So what happens and how does this link into data protection? A large row subsequently ensues when the former Minister for Health gets hold of this and says, what happened to the criminal investigation? Now, there is a dispute about how adequate that criminal investigation was, but this man was never charged with anything serious. And the relatives were not spoken to, and very few medical staff were ever interviewed. Now, you would expect on something like this, the first thing that police would be told to do is to go and start talking to hospital staff, start talking to not only the nurses, but start talking to the doctors and start talking to relatives. Now, I've given you a very potted version of the evidence in relation to this. Now, the Minister for Health at that time didn't like the idea. When he got hold of it, he said, this isn't right. I mean, Ministers for Health are not really supposed to be there to acquiesce in the idea that large numbers of patients can be offed because they're either terminally ill or because nobody can be bothered or what else. Now, there is a famous meeting between our erstwhile Attorney General, Michael Burt, who went on to become our Chief Judge, and the police in relation to this, and that was the shutdown meeting when they decided they weren't going to do any more. They were ordered not to investigate further, and that was the end of that. Now, these documents that I'm referring to are again in circulation now. They've leaked. But what happens is that Mr. Sivray, as he was, the former Minister for Health, is pushed out of office, and we'll come to that in a moment. He's got a blog spot, and these documents go up on his blog. So what happens next? He goes to jail for saying what I'm saying, that this all looks very wrong, and because he's got these documents that point to cover-up, he says. Now, that is done on data protection grounds. But was it data protection? What happens is that the machinery of state moves in one direction once somebody starts to say, excuse me, that highly placed individual who is now our Chief Judge did something that he should not have done or did not do something that he should have done. All right? So possession of the documentation that I can now give you links to became a criminal offence for Mr. Sivray. He went to jail 3 times. Now, does this happen in England? I mean, are journalists here? Is this the sort of thing that happens to people? Yes, no? Can they do that over here? Does it happen? So, it certainly happens in Jersey, and it's happened upon quite a number of occasions. Now, as a byline to this, this case has been reported inadequately in the local media. During the course of the prosecution, Mr. Sivray actually cross-examined one of the officers and said, were you told not to talk to the doctors? Were you told you were not allowed to talk to the relatives? Yes. And does anybody care? Does anybody do anything? Does anybody worry? Does anything change? No, it doesn't. Okay. So there's one example of our fearless data protection commissioner. Now let's come on to a second example in relation to it, and again you'll see the opposite end of it, the way it doesn't function. Local provider of sophisticated accruing solutions in relation to the seismic industry had his complete database stolen. We're talking 2,000 CVs. It's got the medical certificates, pay rates, all that sort of stuff. Now that is data that should be protected. It's stolen by a local crook called Kevin Gollop, a man who had been raided by the JFSC some years ago, moved his enterprise to Mauritius and Switzerland. Comes up with this wonderful idea that you take somebody else's staff, you get them to take the computer program, and then you steal the business and you do as much damage as you possibly can so that they can't do anything about it after the event. Now that's a very big data theft. It's the biggest data theft that I, or to the best of my knowledge, any of my colleagues in Jersey have ever seen. And so what happens? We go to the Data Protection Commissioner and we say, do something. No. We are not interested. We could not even get responses to letters, other than to say, take a hike, talk to somebody else. Was the police interested? No. Was the Royal Court interested? No. Truly, the world moves in mysteriously different ways depending on who you know and what your political orientation is. Now, this was a question, child abuse, is it real? This is a question that I was given as a sort of headline by David Marchant. Frankly, I think it's a bloody stupid question, because anybody who did a little bit of basic research would realise the size of the problem, because documents have linked. We do have the underground media, as I call it, and we do now have a public inquiry going on in relation to it. Let's just give a couple of headlines. Lime pits. I come back to the lime pits. Why do you have lime pits in a children's home? Why do you have teeth? Why do you have body parts? Now, all of this has been inadequately reported on, but more importantly, how many decades of cover-up and disinterest do you have to have in a tiny jurisdiction for this to have gone as far as it went for as many years as it went? I referred earlier to two policemen. We had a chief of police called Graham Power, a highly decorated English policeman with a very, very successful, squeaky clean career. Now, he was nobbled by the local politicians who kept saying to him, we don't want this, because, of course, it's not good for Jersey PLC. We don't want this. So when he refused to get involved in political putches, when he refused to start moving against the Minister for Health, who was saying, look, this is not right, you do not get murdered children in children's homes, etc., 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 what do? They suspend him. Now, I know the political backdrop to this, I know who did it, but he gets suspended. So they can't do anything to him. What do? We just suspend him again. So what is happening to rank-and-file policemen? They know that their chief can be taken out, not for smoking the evidence locker, not for taking money, but because he is investigating a crime that may have an impact upon what? It's going to have an impact on Jersey's reputation, and more importantly, people are going to start turning around and saying, how come these people who went from AG to top judge did not do anything? How did it happen on their watch? So it's simple. Get rid of the policeman. He then tries judicial review proceedings in Jersey, and he goes into a Jersey court. Well, I could have told him when I looked at who the judge was, he was stuffed before he started. There's no chance. So you get rid of the policeman. You push him sideways. Their next problem, and their bigger problem, was Graham Power was the chief of police. The senior investigating officer was Lenny Harper. Now, I don't know how many of you have come across him, seen any of the stuff that he's done and the rest of it. He was a Belfast copper, he was an adult, came in from the outside, took no prisoners, got on with it. And on a day-to-day basis, his car was pulled over every time he went to work by our honorary police to see if he'd been drinking at 7 o'clock in the morning or 8 o'clock. They were targeting him. They were giving him a very strong message. Now, he retired for personal reasons just before they got him, because they were subsequently to try and have him arrested and brought back from England. You arrest policemen for doing what in other jurisdictions would be the right job. And once they had done that, they got rid of the two policemen. Of course, public confidence in the investigation into these crimes went down like that. I was at that stage the designated point of contact for the care leavers, so that there was a conduit, which was not a police conduit, to the police from somebody externally. And the day that Lenny Harper left, interest just went down like that. Everybody knew they were going to put in tame coppers now, and they did. And confidence evaporated. What else did they do in relation to all of this? You've got the Attorney General criticising publicly, and he is right behind the putches to get rid of the police officers. Now, this is really serious because in Jersey, coppers cannot move independently because of the way the Constitution is set up. The police are directly linked to the Attorney General. They have no independence. So there isn't an independent police force. The police force is really the tool of the Attorney General. And we're starting to get the local Evening Post, Mr. Perverti is called, it's his newspaper. They're doing all these wonderful articles about how bad Mr. Power was and how bad Mr. Harper were. They even got accountants to write a report on how dreadfully it had been financially mismanaged. And so you've got involved in this, you've got the Attorney General, the Royal Court, and the media, all going the same way. Now, not surprisingly, confidence in the ability of Jersey police to do things effectively and push forward to prosecution is very, very low. So you can see how the local power structure has shut down an investigation, undermined it. Now it's been allowed to run on, there have been some minor prosecutions and so on and so forth. And you now have the stage where Mr. Harper and Mr. Power, our two former top coppers, are hesitant, or were hesitant, to come back to the island to testify to the independent care inquiry in case they are lifted on some bogus charge. Now, I've put in here at the end a plus ça change. I'll come to it in a little bit more detail if I get time towards the end, because I'm conscious of the fact I'm going on a bit, in relation to another case I was involved in, where we ran a judicial review application because it was a bank fraud, forex fraud, and I haven't got time to deal with it in great detail. It is reported, I can give you the links. It's called CanTrade. And when the regulator wouldn't do anything, we said, excuse me, you are going to do something, and we sought to judicially review the decision. Well, blow me down, the head of the committee that was the regulator is a director of said bank and has an overdraft from them. And we've got the Jersey PLC problem, and out comes the Attorney General trying to intervene in the judicial review proceedings to say that his criminal investigation, and come on to that in a moment, wasn't as severe as everybody thought. So he's undermining his own criminal investigation publicly. Right, so I got carried away a bit with that one. Hope to Grange forensics. For those of you who want them, I can give you the link. Come to me afterwards. I've got the link. That's the police report, which we got somebody locally downloaded before they shut that one down. So you can see all these bits and pieces that I've been talking about. Just, if you want the link, I'll give it to you. Okay. Multiple homicides dealt with. But you've got a link, which I can give anybody who wants it. You've got a link to it because we've got a lot of the documents that are still on blogs. Data Protection Commissioners we dealt with. Now, Constitution. Why is this? Why does all this go on? We have a constitution that is unlawful. I use those words in their strict legal interpretation, and I know what I'm on about. It is unlawful because we cannot provide an Article 6 compliant tribunal in Jersey, whatever we do, because of the feudal constitution and because of the absence of separation of powers. The Speaker is our chief judge. He says who can ask the questions. He says what questions can be asked, and so on and so forth. And I saw, I've seen them tell big fat lies and manipulate the political debate and so on and so forth. Daily intercourse with ministers. We have the Attorney General and the Dean sitting in the Parliament. I mean, anybody with a brain would realise that with no media and on an island where politics and judiciary are intertwined and is highly politicised, it's unwholesome. But this is the problem that we've got. That's the top problem. Subsidiary problem. So just get the enormity of it over. Can you imagine where the Prime Minister is your chief judge? It's not quite like that. Your Speaker is the chief judge. Now that's the problem. Now in this country, centuries ago, all this sort of stuff was sorted out for obvious reasons, because what is the judiciary supposed to do? It's supposed to enforce your laws, and it is supposed to keep the state off the citizens' back. That's one of the jobs. Now here he is the state. He is the chief citizen. Think about it. Other problems that we've got, which are constitutional problems, are the Attorney General is prosecutor. He controls the police forces. Total control. Total control. There is no independence from the AG. AG says prosecute, don't prosecute. I'm giving you a quick route into how it happens, but that is the reality of it. He acts for and advises the government. So do you think the government and the people in the government are ever going to get prosecuted or investigated? No. not keen on prosecuting the government. He is keen on prosecuting enemies of the state, people who open their mouths, people like me, politicians who are on the wrong side, journalists in the wrong place, bloggers, and so on and so forth. The former Minister for Health, who started all this stuff about, why we've got this children's home with lime pits in it, been locked up 3 times. Attorney General undermines his own investigations in publicly. They did it in Cantrade, they did it in Operation Rectangle. Now, in a previous, some years ago, the English were a little bit more interested in what went on in Jersey than they are now, and we had a inquiry headed by Lord Carswell, so a bit of a Buffy there. I always call them Buffies if they've got a title, and you sort of wonder which way they're wired, but he didn't do too badly a job. And you've got the link there to what he recommended. It was a bit weak because he didn't want he wouldn't have interfered with the Attorney General's powers in the way that I would, but basically he said you've got to have separation of powers. Okay? What has happened to it? Absolutely nothing. Local authorities have said, shove it. So we still have a 12th century constitution. A constitution where it is behind the constitution of Sark in terms of feudality. Sark's constitution was said by the Privy Council to be unlawful. Right? Our constitution is far worse. It's just too big a tackle. It's too big to tackle, and nobody in England cares. HMG, no, we're not interested. But you can read what I've said about this, about the Carswell inquiry. You can read my paper to the Carswell inquiry. It's all there. Now, I've put at the bottom here the Court of Appeal. Now, if we had a functioning appellate court, a lot of the local chicanery would go out the window because their daft decisions, the unfairness, would come to an abrupt end because we'd be able to go to court that said, oh, hold on a minute, we're external to this. No. Now, let me explain how you become a Court of Appeal judge in Jersey. They advertise for people, and they come from Scotland, they come from England. We haven't had any from much further abroad. And these are people who, because it's the great thing in the legal career is to be sitting. Right? Now, most of us sit down daily and don't make a big fuss about it, but these guys love it. I am sitting. So it's a fillip for their careers. And they can put these wonderful letters called JA after their name, so they've had a big promotion. Because otherwise these guys just might be silks over there, they haven't got a judicial role, they aren't even crown recorders, and all of a sudden they're important. Now, they come over to Jersey, and they have a grand ceremony, and they are handed their warrant from the Queen by the bailiff and all the jurats. The jurats are these 12 lay assessors in their red cloaks, and they're part of the oligarchy and so on and so forth. So you have this wonderful ceremony. It's like watching a mafia induction, right? They come along, now you are a judge of the Court of Appeal, well done, you've been sworn in. Now go into the room next door and tell us how often we're screwing it up here. It doesn't happen. So what happens is that the Court of Appeal becomes very much part of the problem. But of course, the President of the Court of Appeal is the bailiff who produces the judgments below. Now, he may not sit in relation to the appeal from his own decision, but if you don't get that bailiff, you get the bailiff from Guernsey. And a smattering, and sometimes a majority, of people from England. Now, to call them blind men in spacesuits is really being very, very polite. There's a lot of ego involved, and there is a complete absence of common sense and, frankly, decency. It just doesn't function. The Court of Appeal, to my mind, I don't want to go into too much history, was destroyed by a man called Beloff. I actually grew up before all this happened. I've been in practice nearly 30 years. Now, when I started off, we had different judges. It was same constitution, but it was all much gentler. And we had a man called Sir Godfrey Lacane, who was a proper judge. Humility, strength, wisdom. He listened, and he made judgments, didn't always agree with them. And then we've had this rolling campaign to agree and reinforce whatever comes up from below. So instead of it being a functioning court of appeal, you've just got another layer of difficulty and another layer sitting on you like that. It's just another way of sucking money out of the disadvantaged, pay for an appeal. Now, I sometimes think, Philip, is it you? I mean, have you lost your marbles? I mean, you're out of step with everybody else. And then I speak to my colleagues from London, and I've got a lot of very good friends in London at the London Bar. And they come over and they look at what goes on in the Court of Appeal. And I have known one of the lady friend of mine who's a silk, she's a judge over here. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry, and then she was so shocked that she actually had to lie down afterwards. Because it's just nonsense. It's lovely words, but the sense of it is all the same. It's that feudal hierarchy, it's sit on people. It is ridiculous. So you can see, where do you go if you're a disadvantaged islander? What's our outlet? I like that one. I really like that one. I was just about to get an appalling decision from them, and that statute actually came through the post from a friend of mine from abroad. He didn't know the timing of it. He just sent it to me, and it arrived on my desk exactly the same day that we got another of their teasers. But there we go. Sorry, Constitution. We're a little bit out of sync there. We didn't get the links later. Okay. The island's media, Channel Television, Rankin TV. Why is it called Rankin TV? Because Mrs. Rankin runs the TV station, Mr. Rankin runs the PR agency that helps some of the ministers. It's not journalism as you know it. BBC TV, not the BBC you know. JP, the tooth fairy proponents. And that's our media. Where it breathes a bit is where you get the bloggers. And I've given you some lists there. You can look them up online. If you're a serious journalist, you can get into this quite quickly. Everything that I have, again, I'll give you the link, don't worry. Again, everything I have said here is backed up in spades with documents, and it's over a long period of decades. And take your house off to the bloggers. Some of these guys are doing really very straightforward jobs who are disabled, and they're doing more for us than the media, and including the international media, ever did. Solutions. Oh, there are. I said I've got the blog, the links for you, but yeah, I'll give the slides later if you want. Solutions. What do we need? We need constitutional change for the reasons I've stated. We need Her Majesty to step up to the plate. When somebody from Jersey says, "Excuse me, what are your people doing?" do not write back and tell them to take a hike, which is what happens. There is nothing I have told you that HMG and Her Majesty do not know, with documents in spades. There is a great effort made to deny all knowledge of it. And there is a great effort not to do anything. Her Majesty's government, there is a cut-off point. Now, this looks like breakdown in law and order to me, and it looks like endemic corruption. No, says Her Majesty's government. I got a letter back from the Ministry of Justice not so long ago, and they said, "No, Mr. Sinel, you must refer this to the local authorities." So what am I going to do? I'm going to go to my judiciary, and I'm going to say, "Sorry, you're corrupt, you're hopeless, you're conflicted, go away. You're bad." Well, Mr. Sinel, you take that complaint and you give it to the person you're complaining about. That is Her Majesty's government's position in relation to Jersey. And those of you who look at me in disbelief, I can give you the letter. So, Her Majesty's government needs to shoulder its responsibilities. I've put getting the Balash brothers out of circulation. This is the snake's head at the moment. We have one former bailiff, William Balash, Sir Philip Balash, and we have one present bailiff, his brother William Balash. One's in the States and one's our Chief Judge and was previously the Attorney General, and so on and so forth. Now, on any regime change, they have to go somehow, because they are the last vestiges, or a vestige, of that feudal system which is holding Jersey in stasis. And I put down a court of appeal. I mean, we need a court of appeal that does not make lady silks from London, who are tend to be a tough breed, cry with disbelief. So I'm just going to pull all this together for you and give a practical example, more in the offshore it's gone wrong sort of big financial case. And again, somebody wants it, I can give you the link to it, it's all on the net. It's quite an old case, and it's a good example of how things work, and there are some very good pointers here as to how to actually get your money back. This was Cantrade was a small forex fraud, I say small, 15 to 20 million US, small by international standards, and I acted for the plaintiffs. Private fund, dedicated currency trader. Currency trader was held out by the bank as being independent of it, but he actually lived in a bank-owned house. Now, there's a bent auditor. There's always a bent auditor in a forex fraud or a fund scam. He's producing falsified results. The investors think they're doing well. Everything is rosy, but the funds are disappearing. Now, the funds are disappearing because on every trade, there's a 4-pip charge, and 2 pips are kicked back by the bank, which makes the charge to the trader living in their own home. Okay? So he's incentivised to churn, got a bent partner at one of the big firms, and off you go. So conventional wisdom says, sue the trader, sue the auditor, sue the bank. Normal stuff, commercial litigation every day of the week over here. It's normal lawyering. So we started off under what I would term the old judicial regimes, Peter Krill, not too tender on fraudsters, to quote him. So logical stuff started coming out of the court. We then got the new regime, Michael Burt, Philip Baloch, as bailiff and as Attorney General. Now, all of a sudden, these defrauded investors became persona non grata. Now, why was that? It's Jersey PLC. They hadn't had a scandal before. Nobody had actually gone and kicked it and said, what are you doing? What are you doing? This involves a bank. So we complained to the regulator. Fancy that. Chairman's on the board of the bank, has an overdraft for them, so good old plausible pair. And then we get in court. We've got Sir Philip Baloch producing interesting and unhelpful judgments. Now, this is our presiding judge. He actually refers in a press release to my clients, who are the plaintiffs in the case in front of him, as being a small band of protesters who should be escorted to the harbour. Now, you can imagine how the investors are very unhappy. I'm running a civil case for them, but they've gone to the authorities. Well, what have the authorities done about it? Sitting on it. So we asked the judge to recuse himself. He won't. We go to the Court of Appeal, shove off. We go to the Privy Council, shove off. Eventually we got rid of him. But that was pressure as much as anything else, and you can see how dysfunctional a judicial system is when a plaintiff is referred to in public by the judge as somebody who should be escorted to the harbour. Now, it's not quite as blatant as that now, but that's the reality. That's the mindset. So our Attorney General, Michael Burt, manages eventually to prosecute the trader and the auditor. We say, what about the bank? They're running this fraud. What about the bank? So I write to him, and he gives me, take a hike. So I've given him a gift-wrapped case. We've given it completely gift-wrapped. You couldn't miss. One of the reasons you can't miss is because the bent trader came around and tried to do a deal with me. He spent 3 days in a room with me explaining how he'd done it. The microphones in the ceiling picked it all up perfectly, and we gave it to the police. Right? He said how he'd done it, who he'd done it with, gave me the papers. So this did eventually, after the time periods had almost elapsed, result in a prosecution of the bank, and they fined £2 million. But the main charges were time-barred by this stage because Mr. Burt had refused to do anything about it. Now, that's our Attorney General. That's the same guy who's in the multiple homicide case that I've referred to, and who is, former Minister for Health said, wasn't very enthusiastic. So what's he done? Attorney General into judge. And what's that doing for our culture? You wouldn't have that if you had a functioning society. I got sued for defamation by the chairman of the Regulator. I got referred to the Law Society, who tried to strike me off for having had the temerity to give evidence in a related RICO action in New York, saying things are not well in Jersey. It's the Jersey way. Now, I'll come back to we had the Attorney General intervening in the judicial review proceedings in order to prevent them getting off the ground, undermining his own police investigation, and so on and so forth. This comes out, this is a recurring theme, Attorney Generals undermining police, their own investigations. It comes up in the children's home thing as well. Attorney Generals intimidating senior investigating officers, getting rid of the Chief of Police. Now, the interesting thing in relation to Cantrade was this. At some stage in all of this, I had a very heated meeting with Jack Straw, who was then the relevant minister that may have some influence through the Privy Council or whatever horseshit these people get up to. But I remember it very well because he tried to scuttle off down the corridor and I pursued him. And I cornered him, and so did another states member, and we laid it on the line. Now, the result of that was there was actually an intervention. They told Mr. Burt, you are going to prosecute. There's no two ways about it. Not so long after that, they actually got rid of, and it was passed off in another way locally. But Sir Philip Balash was sacked. Now, he was, at that stage that he went, he was our Chief Judge, Chief Citizen, and Speaker of the House of Parliament. All of a sudden, we're getting this investigation in relation to body parts and dead children or whatever it is that I'm not allowed to allege, etc., etc., etc. But we've got this inquiry in relation to what happened in the children's home. He gives a speech on Liberation Day. Now, Liberation Day is the anniversary of when the Germans went home, because we all know the bit that was invaded. He gives a speech in which he says that the negative publicity from Ireland as a result of this investigation into systemic child abuse is a worse thing than what happened to children. How? That's our Chief Citizen speaking. Now, within about a week of that speech being sent to the Cabinet, he was gone, and he claimed he was ill. And then a week later, he was running for Parliament and reinventing himself. That was the last time that the English did anything useful that I'm aware of in relation to Jersey. There have been subsequent attempts to get them to intervene and get them to take responsibility, which have largely failed. Jack Straw ended up in the House of Commons saying, yeah, well, actually, in answer to a question, I do have responsibilities. We do have responsibilities for Jersey. Since when there has been an almighty effort to row back from that position. You reinterpret the Constitution so that the threshold's very high, you make sure you don't have to do anything. Because I would suggest that on an objective view, we are at the stage where, as an island, we desperately, desperately need external intervention to get us balanced, to give us checks and balances, and so on and so forth. So I've got a few minutes left. I hope that was an interesting foray into what really goes on in Jersey. Now, I'm conscious of my sponsor, as it were. This is an Offshore Alert conference, and there are people in here who would actually like to know the practicalities of getting money back. So let's just do a few moments on that. Nope. Nope. Sorry. Okay. I understand what's gone wrong with this thing. It's gone off again. Okay. So how many of you are litigators? 1, 2, 3. Okay. You can see in what I've been saying, protectionism, politics, and so on and so forth. Your next enemy is called case management, right? I've just set out the reality of how things are, but that's a sort of my islander hat. With my litigator hat on, I run big claims in Jersey with some success. But you've just dealt with judicial attitude. Well, what happens when you have a big case that comes in from the outside, really? Somebody's been ripped off, you want discovery, you want money. Okay, what's going to happen? Hit and miss. Sometimes you get a following wind, sometimes you get local protectionism. But your big enemies here are when it gets to things that are discretionary, where it is case management and therefore unappealable to our not very good court of appeal in any event. So be aware that the first danger zone for you is that a lot of harm can be done to your case on the basis of what is known as case management, exercises of discretion, which are notoriously difficult to appeal. It's stopped again. I want to stop. I understand why. It's not. Okay. There we go. Thank you. Advice at that stage is keep going. Avoid getting yourself into a position where case management, discretionary or interlocutory decisions are going to have a material effect on the outcome. Keep your powder dry. Just keep at it. Now, you can set in for the long term, and when I say that you set in for the long term, as it's an Anglo-Saxon system, you are going eventually to get to the stage where you have a finding of fact. Now, I've referred to that as slow burn because historically, if you're acting for a plaintiff, it takes a long time. But if you keep at it, the other side cannot risk, however much they might want to, however much they think it might help them, they cannot risk the adverse findings at the end. It may take longer, but you are likely to get there. So it's not quite as bad as you might think. Now, I've put in here a sort of two-tier legal system. There is a sort of two-tier legal system. If you're coming in from the outside and you're dodging taxes, well, the attitude in relation to Jersey not working very well is, in some respects, tough titty. Okay, you've taken your risks. What do you expect? But what has appalled a number of English practitioners coming over and looking at things is what is the standard of justice for people who are doing ordinary cases for ordinary people. But when I say two-tier legal system, if you've got a big money case with external publicity, another jurisdiction involved, you are going to get better justice. It's less politicised, it's less personalised, it works better. Then after that, I've got, do not worry, the other side is scared too. They are scared because it's also unpredictable. So they don't know which way it's going to come out. You can have a very hard time at the beginning, and then it starts to get a bit better. The defendants can do very well at an early stage, and then it starts to move. Now, one of the things that moves is that normally you start off with a local judge making the interlocutory decisions, dealing with the early stages of it, and then they pull in a commissioner who is not local, who will be the trial judge. Now, they do that because they've got other ties, they've got other things to do, because they're running Parliament, opening donkey derbies and doing other more important things, or whatever it is they get up to. Now, in the old days, I would always say, well, that's pretty positive. I have to say that I'm becoming more worried by what I'm seeing, where I know the inside track on a case. I may not be doing it, but I know enough about how it is to work out where it should be coming out, and we are getting some very odd decisions. So it's a worry. There is much less certainty. I, as a professional, am much less used to being able to predict the result than my professional colleagues in England. I put down background. You want to be doing the background on every player involved in an offshore case. You want to be looking at political affiliations, ties, all that sort of thing, local issues, and so on and so forth. Complete cynicism, well, I think that after 90 minutes of listening to me, you might be quite cynical about what goes on in Jersey. You want to be cynical. You want to be really cynical. You just have to keep going. And that's the best advice I can have. Don't believe people who smile, nod, wave at you. Just keep going. Choice of allies and advisors, do map it out on the ground. I mean, you can get a lawyer or let alone a Jersey court to produce almost anything, and God help you if you get to accountants. Anything's gone off again in that. Oh, well, mind. So, in general terms, keep at it, keep at it, keep at it. If you can get the major issues sorted out in another jurisdiction, which you're more comfortable with, do. Go for mirror orders, go for enforcement of bits and pieces elsewhere. There are some cases that are only going to be justiciable in Jersey, but you do have to be aware of the realities. Right, I think that's me within 3 minutes. Does anybody have any questions?
Given the lockdown, you talk about the judicial authorities, police, politicians. Could you just tell us how the inquiry into the children's started? I mean, how did that sort of slip under the radar?
It slipped under the radar. I mean, I'll give you the best answer I can. I'm a lawyer. I don't read the political stuff at all. I mean, I've got enough problems in my own stuff without looking at local politics. I think there was a groundswell of feeling that something wasn't quite right, more in relation to the way that it had been dealt with, because William Barsh has a very unpopular locally. He was the AG, very high-handed. That would be part of it. Another part of it would be that people in Jersey, particularly politicians and civil servants, think that an inquiry is great because it always vindicates them. You can have an inquiry of vindication, I've heard them called before. So a bit of a whoopsie, really. I don't think they realised where it was going to go to. And then we've had powers given to the Committee of Inquiry so they can subpoena documents and people. So that's how that happened. Yep.
Two quick questions. In relation to the children's home, the arrest of the detention of Goodman at Heathrow, what were the grounds passed
I'm not.
to the UK authorities? And was there any inquiry afterwards about the legitimacy of that?
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, you could ask her. You could ask one of the local blogs. They would know more about it. I can give you a link to an article. I know it happened, and it is pretty chilling stuff. A visa infringement, an accidental one. Well, just get another one. It's not a problem.
And the other question is, I did hear a few months ago at the Cambridge Economic Crime Symposium, and I know there are people here today and yesterday who were at that and who spoke, where Barry Foudemar of the JFSC spoke in plenary session and also in workshop session about the success of Jersey in dealing with what you might call negligent company formation agents.
Yeah.
Strongly contrasted the success of Jersey in comparison with the relative failure of England and Wales, and we heard plenty about the latter yesterday afternoon. I'm wondering if you'd like to comment on that aspect, which of course does relate to foreigners, very often outside the UK. And so I was interested in that in relation, your thoughts on that, in relation to your comment about the two-tier system.
Well, I've just given you a tale of two regulators. You remember what I said there? Okay, well, these are the smaller guys.
So they are cracking down on dodgy small people. Is that would be the gist of your argument to him?
Look, the offshore shuffle gets more complex all the time. So the smaller players are being legislated out of existence. Now, whether that's good or bad it's a fact that they can't now cope with the regulatory framework and the form filling and the being lent on by the regulator. A lot of people in the industry actually think the regulator is exterminating the smaller companies as a matter of policy. I mean, that's where it comes back to me. I don't run a regulated industry, but I do talk to the guys. Certainly the cost and expense and the ever-expanding you know what regulators are like. You know, it's like rabbits. You know, you have 2 and then you got 15 of them, and you know they're eating more grass and they're multiplying and all that sort of stuff. You know, it's all that going on as well. And I've given you a tale of 2 regulators. You know, I can't talk to generalities of an industry that I don't run. As I said at the beginning, house start, I talk to stuff I've seen. Anybody else? No? Okay, thank you.